At the beginning of the movie, we see a girl kneeling in the middle of a circle when a naked older man approaches her from behind, while an older lady records what appears to be a ceremonial ritual. Piper, a 14-year-old girl who appears to be visually impaired, is waiting for a bus ride home, when she hears a group of friends talking about their social life. Eager to be part of the group, she approaches them to ask if they're going to the city so she can join them, but they rather looked at her awkwardly. Soon after, her stepbrother Andy joins Piper to take her home. First, he scolds her for being so impatient and wanting to leave with strangers. Piper really doesn't care, and as they walk, she asks Andy if the girls liked her. Looking back, Andy sees them making jest of her and lies to Piper that they liked her, but their dress seems awful, so she can feel better for not being part of them. Andy is fixing his car's side mirror with a rubber tape when Piper calls out for him to come. When he asks what the problem was, Piper tells him that the bathroom water has been running for minutes now since they arrived, and she's been calling out to their dad, but there's no response from him, which is quite odd because he always answers her calls. Andy carefully approaches the door and opens it. To his shock, their dad's lifeless body is just laying on the floor, with Piper clinging onto it, crying as she questions her brother how this happened. Later, in a foster care agency, the lady in charge of assigning kids to a foster home intends to put Andy and Piper in a separate foster home, reason being that Andy got into trouble with one of his foster parents when he was younger. Andy wouldn't allow it, so he begs Wendy to let them stay together since he's the only one that can take care of Piper. Wendy agrees and tells Andy he needs to behave well this time, so after 3 months, when he turns 18, he can become the official guardian of Piper. When they get to their new home, the homeowner Laura is so happy to see them and welcomes them by first taking a selfie, which apparently she appears to be blocking Andy's face with her head. Laura proceeds to introduce them to her dog, which appears to be dead and was only stuffed to make it look alive, which Andy finds rather awkward but doesn't say anything. Curious, Andy asks Laura if the mat on the floor was for Piper, and she replies that it was for her dead daughter who drowned years ago. As they look around the house, Andy finds a kid known as Oliver standing inside an empty pool mangling a cat. Laura immediately rushes to take the cat away from the boy before he strangles it to death. Next, Laura takes Piper to her room and points Andy to his own separate room. Finally settling down, Andy is texting his friend on his phone when Laura enters his room. She tells him she learnt from Wendy that he's applied for full guardianship for Piper when he turns 18, so now he needs to behave well because they will need her report to grant him full custody. She then proceeds to ask Andy if he's texting his girlfriend or boyfriend on his phone, which Andy finds really inappropriate but acts rather cool. Laura then proceeds to tell Andy that she's a counselor, so he should feel free to share anything with her since she's here to help. While they talk, Piper's voice could be heard calling out to Andy, indicating that they share the same wall. Seizing the opportunity, Laura picks up Andy's phone and starts looking through it. Andy turns, yells and rushes to grab his phone back from Laura. She looks really scared because of his approach, and Andy quickly apologizes for his behavior and she leaves his room. During the day, Andy plays loud music while working out and Piper arranges her room while Laura looks at her through the door as she smiles. At night, Laura tells Oliver to wait in his room before playing a VHS recording of a girl crying in the background while a man makes a circle with a white substance. At the middle of the night, Andy couldn't sleep, and when he hears a noise, he looks through his window to find Laura and Oliver walking to another shed in the compound. The next morning, Andy wakes up sweating. Looking at his lower body, Andy appears to have wet his pants, so he quickly rushes to wash the clothes, including his bedsheets, so no one would notice this. Before leaving the house, Laura tells Oliver to remain calm as she would be back soon and locks the door. During the final burial ceremony of their late dad, Piper asks Andy what their dad looks like. Clearly not looking at the corpse, he tells her he looks good. Once everyone leaves the podium, Laura gets close to the body and takes out a scissors which she uses to cut the hair and puts it in her purse. Afterwards, Laura goes outside where she meets Andy and Piper, clearly up to something. She reveals to Piper that Andy lied to her about the looks of her father because he's too scared to look at him, and takes him back to properly say his final goodbye. Meanwhile, at home, Oliver keeps banging on the glass door until he breaks it with his bare hand, not minding the blood that's gushing out from his injured hand. Standing next to the body, Laura tells Andy to give his dad a final goodbye kiss, although Andy is reluctant at first but eventually kisses the forehead. Not satisfied enough, Laura tells him to kiss the mouth, as custom demands, but Andy clearly refuses to do it, so Laura leans forward and kisses the corpse on the lips. Once everyone is back home, Laura encourages everyone that they should play a game that allows them to take a shot of vodka whenever they guess a number from the other person. Andy agrees to play, but when Piper is about to take a shot, he looks worried, but Laura encourages him that it's just for the night, and eventually they end up drinking the whole bottle while Oliver stands outside watching. When Piper is fast asleep, Laura uses the opportunity to start a conversation with Andy about his deepest, darkest secrets. At first, he doesn't feel comfortable to share, so Laura tells him how she used to go to the cemetery for weeks to cry on the grave of her daughter, and there's nothing she wouldn't do in this world just to hear her daughter call her mom one last time, also revealing that she knew he hit her sister Piper one time when they were younger. Andy then starts to talk about his past experience with his dad before he died, and he then explains to Laura that when he was younger his dad always ignores him. To get his attention, he always get into trouble at school, which at the end he's met with a more brutal beating that results in him passing out eventually and waking up the next morning covered in bruises. When his dad married Piper's mom, Andy thought they would become the perfect family, and things would change, but that wasn't the case. This time, he was totally ignored by his father, and all his attention was on Piper, which often made Andy feel jealous. After making sure everyone is fast asleep, Laura goes back to her room, where she grabs a cup and urinates in it. Then, she goes to Andy's room. After ensuring he's fast asleep, she pours the urine on his lower body to make it look like he wet himself. Afterwards, she takes his phone, opens his eyes to unlock it, and deletes the photo he took of Oliver and her stuffed dog. The next morning, as she bathes Oliver, Laura tells him that she knows he's hungry, but he has to wait a little longer. Oliver doesn't even budge, so she asks how she can believe he's in there if she can't see him. Oliver's eyes roll to meet hers, causing the tap behind her to start running. When her attention returns to Oliver, he's making a cat-like noise as his eyes turn red, and the glass shatters. This wakes Andy up, drooling heavily. When he checks his pants, he finds they're wet again, so he wraps everything up and heads to the laundry to quickly wash them. There, he finds Laura and Piper, so he quickly turns back, but Laura insists that she's already washing, so she can wash it all together. She smells the urine and pretends it wasn't her doing. Andy clearly has no idea what happened. Piper starts to look worried for her brother, and Laura tells her that Andy isn't well, that he got quite aggressive last night, and she'll share the details in the car as they go shopping. Scared of using the shower in the house, Andy goes outside to bathe from the running tap water. Oliver is standing in front of his glass window when he sees Andy and waves at him, but Oliver is busy killing and eating a fly that's been bugging him. Later, Andy grabs a knife, which he uses to open the door to Oliver's room and invites him to join him in the diner. While trying to make small talk with Oliver, he uses the knife to cut a fruit for him and offers it to him. Then, he bends over to grab something, and when he turns around, Oliver is chewing on the knife as blood gushes from his mouth. Andy struggles to take the knife from him, and when he does, he drags him out to take him to the hospital. But Oliver suddenly stops at the sight of a white mark on the ground. Andy keeps dragging him, asking what he's doing, but Oliver doesn't talk and keeps holding back, not wanting to cross the line. Andy still doesn't understand and finally drags him over the line. Oliver screams in pain, falls to the ground, and starts convulsing, his eyes turning red. Andy hears something coming from his abdomen, and when he checks Oliver's belly, it appears to be rumbling uncontrollably. For the first time, Oliver speaks, and his words are, "Help me." At that moment, Laura arrives home and screams at Andy to get away from Oliver. In her room, Laura watches another VHS recording, where a lady appears to have crossed the line and regained some of her senses, but then a ritual is performed to possess her with a dead spirit. The real Oliver then starts to manifest and asks, "Where am I?" Looking at Laura, he asks who she is and what she wants. Scared, he starts to scream for help, so Laura turns up the volume of the music so Piper and Andy won't hear the screams. Finally, seeing the part that repossesses the individual, Laura covers Oliver's mouth to stop him from screaming and performs a cyclic motion on his forehead, which entrances Oliver, and he goes back to being mute once more. Meanwhile, Andy is at the door, saying they need to take Oliver to the hospital, only for Laura to come out of her room and yell at him for breaking into Oliver's room. She slams the door shut after taking Piper inside with her. Piper asks if Oliver will be alright, and Laura tells her he'll be fine and is only worried about the cat that appears to be missing, as she feeds Oliver Phil's hair, which she took from his corpse. Later, Piper takes out her stick, which she rarely uses, and goes out in search of the cat. From a sky view, the house is seen circled with a white substance. While Andy is taking a shower, he suddenly hears something approaching behind him. When he turns around, it's the spirit of his deceased father, telling him that Piper will die in the rain. As soon as he tries to leave the bathroom, he slips and falls unconscious. Andy wakes up in a hospital when he hears rain falling. He tries to warn the doctors that his sister will die if he doesn't go now to help her, but because he's struggling so hard, he's given an injection that makes him fall back to sleep. The next day, Laura visits Andy at the hospital, where he tells her about his dream of his dad saying that Piper will die in the rain. He begs Laura not to let her out when it's raining, and she makes a pinky promise not to. Next, we see Laura bringing Piper outside while it's raining, so they can play around, and Laura keeps associating this experience with her late daughter. Afterwards, Laura offers her daughter's clothes to Piper to wear and tells her to call her mom instead of Laura, as she starts imagining Piper as her dead daughter, Kathy. She then asks Piper if she'll stay with her, even when Andy turns 18 and wants to take custody of her. Laura tells her that they're looking forward to getting their own place and will visit her during the weekends. She proceeds to show her something else, takes her hand, and places it on a freezer. Piper can't tell what she's touching, and Laura says it's just frozen meat, but in reality, it's the body of her daughter, Kathy, which she's been preserving inside a deep freezer. When Andy returns from the hospital, he goes to check up on his sister, only for Laura to tell him to stay away from Piper, as it seems creepy for him to be there. Following this, Andy does some bench presses to deal with his depression, as he keeps remembering how everyone treats his sister nicely while he's always neglected. This thought almost causes him to lose control, but he manages to get the weight off him. Meanwhile, Laura is fixated on recordings showing how a dead person can be reincarnated by taking a human who's already possessed by a dead spirit to finally transfer the spirit into the desired host. After watching this, Laura goes to her bathroom, sprays Andy's cologne on her body to smell like him, and goes into Piper's room. For a moment, it looks like she wants to tuck her in, but suddenly, she smashes her fist into Piper's face and quickly runs off. Piper wakes up, screaming in pain, but Andy is deep in sleep and can't hear her crying. The next morning, Laura blames Andy for the bruise that is now formed around Piper's eyes, but Andy senses something is off because he doesn't remember waking up that night. He thinks it's either Laura or Oliver who must have hurt her, but Laura points out that he's the only one strong enough to cause such damage, judging from the weights he lifts every morning and the abuse he got from his father, making him the only one capable of hurting his stepsister. While they argue, Andy spots Oliver in the rain, looking very different, and tries to take a picture of him, but Laura strikes to stop him. He pushes her away and tries to go out, but the door is locked. Laura pretends she's trying to protect Piper, considering Andy dangerous, but then Andy says, "Just like you protected Kathy." This triggers Laura into fighting Andy and grabbing his phone to smash it. Tired of everything, Andy punches through a wall to indicate he's had enough, and Laura screams as if he hit her. Andy tells Piper to come with him so they can leave together, but Laura slowly drags Piper to herself. Andy heads out to the foster home center to report the incident. When he gets there, they tell him to wait. While waiting, he finds a poster of Oliver on a board that reports he's missing. Meanwhile, Laura takes Piper to her game center for practice. At Wendy's office, Wendy says she got a call from Laura, claiming Andy attacked her, hit his sister, and even wets his pants at night. Andy replies that she's lying and shows her the poster of a missing boy, Connor, who's apparently Oliver, and tells her that the child is in Laura's house. He asks Wendy if she even did a background check on Laura before sending them there. She points out that Laura worked there for nearly 20 years, was the best counselor they had, and would never hurt a child. When Laura returns home, she finds the place trashed, and Oliver is behind it. Looking at Laura, Oliver grows hungry for flesh and attacks her, ripping off her hair. She struggles to overpower him but fails as Oliver bites her hand. She manages to get away and locks herself in her room as Oliver keeps pounding on the door and screaming. After revealing that Laura calls Connor Oliver, Wendy notes that was the name Laura used for her nephew with curly red hair. She tries to call Laura, but Andy stops her, saying Laura might hurt Piper, and begs her to take him there. She agrees. At home, Oliver doesn't seem tired of causing havoc and proceeds to chew on the edge of the kitchen's dining table. A few seconds later, he starts to feed on his own flesh. Laura manages to wake up, covers her wound, and goes out, only to find Oliver already feasting on the decaying body of her daughter. While they drive to Laura's, Andy leaves a voice message for Piper. In the message, he expresses how much their dad hated and abused him, confesses that when he was 8, he hit her once and regrets it, and says the bruise on her face wasn't from him, it was Laura. He points out that Laura is bad and hateful, just like their dad, but won't let Piper see it, and there's something really wrong with Laura. Meanwhile, Piper isn't with her phone and is with Laura, who overhears Wendy's voice. Realizing she won't be left alone at home for long, Laura starts to clear out the mess caused by Oliver. In just a few minutes, she's able to clean everything. Wendy arrives at the house, and Laura allows her to assess it to confirm Andy's claims. Laura takes Wendy to each of their rooms. Piper's room appears well arranged and nice, but Andy's room is messy and unkempt, which Laura attributes to his aggression. Meanwhile, Andy has left Wendy's car to check the small cabin he always sees Laura taking Oliver to. To his horror, he finds Oliver chewing on the corpse of Kathy. Wendy seems satisfied with what she's seen so far and apologizes to Laura for the disturbance, but at that moment, Laura wipes her face, leaving a blood stain behind. Wendy asks if she's okay. Then, Wendy hears Andy calling out to her to see something. Laura, knowing what she's being called to witness, starts to confess to Wendy, saying she intends to bring her daughter, Kathy, back from the dead with Oliver's help. Wendy struggles to free herself from Laura's grip and rushes outside to meet Andy, who takes her to the cabin, where she witnesses the horror. As they hurry back to the car they came with to get help, Laura drives her car and runs them over, smashing Wendy against her own car. Seconds later, Laura walks up to Andy, who's barely alive, and presses his head into the mud and suffocates him. Then, she drives to Piper's school to pick her up, ignoring the teacher when she asks what caused the bruise on Piper's eye. When they return home, Piper senses something is off. When she hears Andy calling out to her, she follows the voice, but it's Oliver mimicking Andy's voice. Laura immediately comes to take her away. Piper asks who it was, and Laura says it's Oliver. When Piper asks what he looks like, Laura tells her he has thick curly red hair, judging from her touch earlier. Laura realizes that something is really off and makes a calculated turn to her room and locks the door behind her. Piper notices something on the ground, leans forward, and discovers it's her brother's body. As she cries and begs him to wake up, Laura manages to open the door with a spare key. She shares her plan to use Piper to bring back her dead daughter. Piper asks what will happen to her now, and Laura says she'll drown her. Piper throws an object that hits Laura in the face, giving her time to run, but she eventually hits a surface and passes out. Laura drags her body outside while Oliver walks around the pool, looking malnourished, and enters the pool with Laura, growling like a wild beast. Laura proceeds to dip Piper into the pool, trying to drown her, as she struggles to get free. For a moment, it looks like it's working, but as Piper suddenly calls her mom, this makes Laura to suddenly stop what she was doing, remembering her daughter, who got injured in the pool and died there. As she hugs Piper, Piper suddenly frees herself. Trying to make her way out of the compound, she hears a noise and turns around to see Oliver. She quickly defends herself by kicking him in the stomach and pushing him. As Piper runs through the woods, she makes it out to the road, where she's spotted by other people and taken to get help. Oliver sees this, and for a moment, he regains his consciousness. He looks at the poster reporting he's missing, crosses the line, and ends up screaming in pain. Hours later, the police arrive at the compound and find Oliver lying on the floor, begging for help, and Laura dead inside the pool, holding onto the corpse of her daughter. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video and would love to see more from this channel, please like and subscribe.